Hey everybody, welcome to the video. So we are lineup building for the 3-game Thanksgiving Day slate over on Draftkings. And a couple of things before I start this video. Number one, the purpose of this is not for me to build you guys a lineup to use in all of your contests. You have to be able to think for yourselves and build your own lineups. Plus, I'm not even sure what this is going to look like yet. This is not predetermined. We are building this together on the fly. And if you guys watch these videos every single week, you know I like to focus on cash games. But since this is a 3-game slate, it might be more of a mixture of GPPs and cash games because we kind of have to get a little bit weird on a 3-game slate. That's perfectly fine for a slate of this size. And if you find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I really do appreciate it. Might as well hit that notification bell as well while you're at it, so you get notified whenever I post new content. And YouTube tells me that around 50% of the people watching these videos have not yet subscribed, so if you're a frequent visitor of the channel, or if you're new and you like what you see, consider that subscribe button because it really helps the channel grow, and that's obviously going to help me out as well. My social media is in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, and I think that's enough plugging. I think we can get into today's video. Alright, if you guys watch my lineup building videos each and every single week, you know I typically like to start with the running back position, but on this one I'm going to start with the quarterback spot, and I'm just going to plug in Deshaun Watson and move on. I think he's by far the best quarterback play on this slate. This is the best game for fantasy purposes as well. Both these defenses are pretty bad, so it should be a pretty back and forth shootout, and it's got over a 50-point over-under, which is the highest on this slate. Texans also have the highest implied team total on this slate as well, and this is a team that likes to throw the football. You can't really rely on Duke Johnson on the ground to get 20-plus carries and 100-plus yards because he's not looked that good. He's also not built for that either, so Deshaun Watson, he should have a pretty game versus Detroit. Not a very good defense at all, and he's been kind of been on fire for about a month or so. If you exclude that Cleveland game where he's playing in a hurricane where they only scored 7 points, besides that, he's been great. 34 points, 24, 27, 35, 29, 23, almost over 300 yards in all those games besides 2, and he was close versus Jacksonville. So if you exclude that Cleveland game, he's been pretty much at 300 yards each and every single week for a long time now. So $7,400. I know he's a bit expensive, but the pricing is very soft on this slate, and it's really not going to hamper our lineup in any way. So I'm going to plug in Deshaun Watson, and we're going to build around him and correlate our lineup with the Deshaun Watson build. And since we're using Deshaun Watson, I want to make sure I get his top 2 pass catching options in. So I think we're just going to move on to the wide receiver position, and then we'll worry about running backs in a little bit. But since we're using Watson, we're going to want to use Will Fuller, and we're going to want to use Brandon Cooks. So we'll start with Will Fuller here. Both these guys are similar plays, but Brandon Cooks, in my opinion, is one of the best plays on the slate. I think he's massively underpriced. He should be closer to Will Fuller's price tag. They get similar volume each and every single week. So I'm not really sure why there's a $1,000 discount with Brandon Cooks. So he's pretty much one of my favorite plays on the entire slate. But I also want to use Will Fuller as well. They got good chemistry, and Fuller certainly has upside. So we're going to plug him in. It's a good matchup as a wide receiver versus Detroit. And really, Detroit's got an awful defense versus the run and versus the pass. So everyone on the Texans has a pretty good matchup here. And I do expect a lot of points to be scored. And like I said, Brandon Cooks, he's a similar play to Will Fuller, but he's $1,000 cheaper, actually $1,100 cheaper. And I just don't see why we wouldn't want to play Brandon Cooks. He's probably going to end up being one of the highest, if not the highest owned play on the entire slate. Now, he only had 5 targets last week, but before that, 8, 9, 9, 9, and 12. He's very involved in this offense, and he's been pretty consistent, too, at 33, 21, 13, 17, 9, and 12. And he's actually got a higher target share this season than Will Fuller. So $5,300 and a good matchup versus Detroit. I think he's one of the easiest plugins on this slate, and I feel pretty good about the start to this lineup because we got the nice correlation play. So we got Watson, then we got his 2 pass catching options in Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks. So at this point, I'm not sure where I want to go with the wide receiver 3 spots, so I feel like we should start worrying about running backs. So we'll go to the running back position now. And I think there's quite a few good options on this slate. We have Zeke. He's coming off a pretty good game last week versus Minnesota. DeAndre Swift, he returned to practice yesterday, so I think he might be good to go. If he's not good to go, obviously we can't play him. And I think in this lineup, the first one we're going to do is a DeAndre Swift build. And I would do another one if he happens to be out to see what that could look like as well. So DeAndre Swift, if he's going to play in this game, he's one of my favorite plays on this slate. James Conner is kind of interesting versus Baltimore, but I don't love it. Antonio Gibson, I think, is a very solid play versus Dallas. They've had one of the worst defenses in the league this year, and Antonio Gibson is scoring a ton of touchdowns this season. And then Duke Johnson at $5,700. The price keeps coming up, and he keeps sucking every single week. His targets went up to 5 last week, so that was nice to see because we know he's a good pass catching running back, but he just can't get anything going on the ground. But this is a good spot versus Detroit. They're actually allowing the most points per game to the running back position, but he is certainly hard to trust. But he's on the field pretty much the entire game with David Johnson being on the IR. So I think he's certainly viable, but trust me, it does not feel good. I'm not sure if I want to play like 5 or 6 Texans. So We'll see about Duke Johnson if he makes this build. And then obviously we have Gus Edwards down here at $4,000 with the news that Dobbins and Mark Ingram have coronavirus. So they're not going to be playing in this game. So he's going to be the starting running back on that team and who should see around 15 to 20 some touches depending on how game flow works out. So he is definitely an option as well at only $4,000 and he can really open up your lineup. But for right now, the RB1 and the RB2 spot, Gus Edwards is more reserved for the flex spot because I don't think you have to use him at the RB2 spot because there's plenty of value on this slate. So let's just plug in Zeke at $6,800. I know it's a tough matchup versus Washington. They've had a very good defense this season. I believe they're allowing the 5th fewest points per game to the running back position. But on a small slate, just give me the guys that are going to get plenty of volume. And it was nice to see him have a good week last week. It was actually the first time he went over 100 yards all season long. He had a receiving touchdown. He's always been involved in the receiving game. Problem is, ever since Dak Prescott left, those numbers have certainly went down. I mean, if you're looking at since week 7, 2, 2, 3, and 2 targets. Certainly not what it was earlier in the season. But the volume seems to be there. He should get 20-plus touches. It's a bad matchup versus Washington, but he's a 3-point home favorite. And I like his chances of finding the end zone. So Zeke, I feel like he's a nice, safe cash play this week. If you want to fade him in tournaments to get different, I totally understand that. But kind of going with a more cash game build here, although it's going to be a mixture of cash and GPP. I feel like Zeke's one of the safer options on the board here. And like I mentioned, DeAndre Swift is one of my favorite plays in the entire slate, assuming he plays. If he doesn't play, I'm going to try to build a separate lineup without DeAndre Swift to see what that would look like. But as of right now, assuming he's good to go and gets cleared from his concussion protocol, I mean, he should be able to eat versus the Texans. They are ranked dead last, 32nd DVA versus the run. Or at least I'm pretty sure they're dead last. We can check my spreadsheet to make sure. Alright, so yeah, they are dead last, 32nd DVA versus the run, and just look how bad they are versus running backs this year. I mean, the 3rd most points per game, 145 rushing yards per game, and over a rushing touchdown per game as well. We know DeAndre Swift's going to be involved in the passing game, and also the last time we saw him play, he was named the starter and played on a season-high 75% of the snaps, so as long as he's good to go, it's not like he's dealing with a leg injury or anything, it's just a concussion, but it's not like it's going to hamper him being able to run the ball, so as long as he's cleared, he should be able to eat versus Houston. I know he's a bit expensive at $6,500, but this is an awesome matchup for him, and I'm really excited to see him play, hopefully, versus Houston on Thursday. So we're going to plug him in. And I definitely like to start this lineup. I know we only have 4,400 left, but there's definitely some cheap options we can go with to make this work. But we got Watson, Zeke, Swift, Fuller, and Cooks, and I think that's a pretty studded lineup already. So now we can look at a wide receiver 3, a tight end, a flex, or a defense. Since we don't have much money left, I think we're just going to plug in Gus Edwards at the flex just to see how open our lineup can be, plugging in a cheap guy. If I can find him. Yeah, right there, $4,000. So with J.K. Dobbins and Mark Ingram going to be out, he's going to be in a starting role here. And actually, the last time they played Pittsburgh in Week 8, Edwards actually had a solid game. He had 16 carries, 87 yards, and a touchdown for 14.7 points. Not saying this is going to be an exact replica of what happens again, and I can't imagine he's going to get any work in the receiving game. But at $4,000, if he happens to find the end zone, we're definitely going to be pretty happy with the production that he gives us. If he doesn't find the end zone, he still might be able to get us like 80-some yards on the ground, 70. I know it's a tough matchup versus Pittsburgh, one of the best defenses in football, and they've been very stingy versus running backs this season, but this is pretty much just a price and volume play, and this is a team that loves to run the football down the opposing team's throat, and Lamar Jackson certainly hasn't been consistent through the air this season. So Edwards, he's going to be lined for a lot of work, and I do think he's a very safe option given his price point. And now we have 4,500 left. And I want to try to fit in McLaurin. I'm not sure how easy that's going to be, but if we can fit in McLaurin, this would be an insanely studded out lineup because we can get McLaurin, Cooks, Fuller, Swift, Elliott, and Deshaun Watson. I feel like that might be a little bit overkill. I'm not sure if it's going to be able to fit, but we could go cheap at tight end to make it work. So let's just try it. He's the most expensive wide receiver on this slate, but it's an amazing matchup versus Dallas. They're allowing the 2nd most points per game to wide receiver position. They got absolutely destroyed by Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson last week. Not saying he's going to score like a combined 60 points, but I could definitely see him scoring over 25 here. It's just an awesome matchup versus Dallas. Earlier when they played this season, he had 11 targets, 7 catches, 90 yards, and he found the end zone for 22 fantasy points, which isn't amazing, but it's definitely good, and I would not be disappointed with 22 points. I would like more of like a 30-point game, but he certainly has the capabilities of that. Really the only thing holding back Terry McLaurin, the guy's a fantastic wide receiver, but he's really the only good wide receiver receiving threat on that team, so the defense is kind of keying on him, and plus he always has to deal with poor quarterback play. But outside of that, the guy's a fantastic wide receiver, but we're going to plug him in, and we're going to see if this works, because if we can fit in McLaurin in this lineup, I'd feel pretty darn good about it. So we only have 3,300 left, but there is a cheap tight end I like this week, and it is Jordan Akins. He's coming off a pretty big game, so if we plug him in, we could definitely make that work with the defense. So let's just plug in Jordan Akins here. Now, there's a couple of tight ends I do like. TJ Hawkinson, I know he's kind of dealing with a toe injury, but I think he's solid. I know he's a bit expensive, right around $5,000, but it's looking like no Kenny Golladay this week, so he's going to be in line for some more work like he has the past couple of times that Kenny Galladay's been out. And then after that, Ebron, Schultz, Logan Thomas are kind of interesting. It's just, I don't know, they just don't get me that excited. So why not just take the cheapest starting tight end on this slate at only $2,900. He's also coming off a pretty good game last week where he had 6 targets, caught 5 of them for 83 yards, didn't find the end zone, but 13.3 points. And if he happened to do something similar to that at only $2,900, you would definitely not be too disappointed. We also know Randall Cobb's going to be out for this game, and Kenny Stills is questionable, so that could funnel more targets to Jordan Akins once again. And if that's the case, I will be very happy at $2,900. So we're going to plug him in. And I know we have 3 guys stacked with Deshaun Watson, but it's a small slate, so I don't feel too bad about it. And then we have $3,700 left, and we can fit in my favorite defense on this slate. I know it's going to be against our running back and Zeke Elliott, but I mean, we can't get perfect on a 3-gamer. We might have to play one guy against our defense, so I don't feel that bad about it. And they've been one of the stingiest defenses this season. They've been tough versus the pass and tough versus the run. And that's actually not a bad lineup, and we zeroed out to $0 remaining. So we got Watson, Zeke, DeAndre Swift, Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, McLaurin, Jordan Akins, Gus Edwards, and the Washington football team defense. I actually think that is really solid. Again, I'm building this on the fly, so I'm not sure what I'm going to end up using on Thursday, but this is definitely, I think, a pretty solid lineup as of right now. So like I said earlier, we're not exactly sure if DeAndre Swift is going to play. So let's take Swift out, and we'll try to build from there. Let me see what else. I probably have to take out the defense, and then maybe the tight end, and we'll see if we can work around that. Now, I feel like I'm still going to have to use Jordan Akins unless I go really cheap at running back. But since I already have a cheap running back and Gus Edwards in, I guess the cheapest we could go is really Duke Johnson that I think is viable. So we might not have to go down. Well, I probably still have to use Jordan Akins, but let's plug in the running back 2 spot. I think it comes down between Duke Johnson, Antonio Gibson, or James Conner here. Personally, I'm a big fan of Antonio Gibson on this slate. Dallas has allowed a ton of rushing yards per game, and he's been scoring a lot of touchdowns. Like if we look at his game log, touchdown, 2, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1. But he's been scoring a lot of touchdowns this season, and for the most part, he's been pretty consistent. He's only scored less than double-digit points in 2 games this year, and like he's going to be on the field. I know he's not getting as many targets as J.D. McKissick. McKissick has been getting a ton of work in the passing game, but overall, Gibson's been a pretty safe play. Should get you 15-plus touches, and in a good matchup versus Dallas, I like his chances of finding the end zone again, so I feel pretty good about plugging him in. And I guess that could correlate well if we use the Washington football team defense again, which I think we should be able to afford them, but I'm not totally sure at the moment. But I feel like we might have to go Akins again, so let's just plug in Akins. We already talked about him, so I don't have to talk about him again. But then we could go up to the Steelers at $4,200, or I guess you could just go back with the Washington football team again. That would leave about $500 remaining, but I think both options would be fine there, although I guess it's a halfway decent correlation to use Gibson in the Washington football team defense. But if you want to pick one of the best defenses of football this season, you have the Steelers at $4,200. Now, if you wanted to spend up a little bit at the tight end position and maybe go down with your defense, it might be able to work out. I'm not sure. Hawkinson leaves you $2,400 left, although that would only leave you with the Lions defense, and I do not feel that comfortable about it. So I guess maybe if you go the Ebron route, then you could fit in the Texans defense, which I actually think is okay, especially if Swift is out, because if Swift is out, the Texans defense certainly doesn't have much to worry about, so I guess that could be a route as well. But there's definitely quite a few ways you can go on this slate. Now, before we get out of here, there's a couple more things I wanted to try. So if you don't like Gus Edwards this week and you want to get a little bit different, pivoting off that cheap chalk, which could certainly bust versus a really tough Pittsburgh defense, he's not really involved in the passing game. So there's certainly a scenario where Gus Edwards does not work out. So we're going to take him out. And if we're not using Gus Edwards, I hate to say it, but we're probably not going to be able to fit in Terry McLaurin. And I want to try to just fit in Swift again, because I'm assuming Swift plays. So we'll go from here. So since I have a bunch of Texans passing options, I want to try to at least get one Lions pass catching option in this lineup. So we're gonna go with Hawkinson. I know he's a bit expensive, but the volume's gonna be there. The guy's a good tight end. I like his touchdown upside. He had 7 targets last week. I know he left the game briefly, but he came back, scored 10.8 points. Nothing too spectacular, but it looks like Kenny Golladay is going to be out, so it's going to just funnel more targets his way once again. So we're going to plug in Hawkinson here. Now, we only have $4,300 left per player, and I said I'm not going to use Gus Edwards in this lineup. So at the flex spot, we can go quite a few ways. We could go like Duke Johnson. We could go Amari Cooper. We could go Marvin Jones. If you want to go the 3 running back route, you could use Duke Johnson, But if you want to go the wide receiving route, we can have Amari Cooper, who probably has more upside than Duke Johnson these days, just because Duke, man, I know he's on the field a ton, but he just can't do anything on the ground. He had 10 carries versus New England, and keep in mind, that's a very soft matchup versus New England, and he had 15 yards for 1.5 yards per carry. Now, the targets were up, where he had 5 targets and 3 catches, but only 20 receiving yards in the past 2 weeks, 5.4 and 6.5 points. He has certainly been disappointing. The thing is, it's a really good matchup versus Detroit. They're allowing the most points per game to the running back position, and they're close to dead last DVOA versus the run. So if you want to go the Duke Johnson route, you can, but just know you can easily replace him with Amari Cooper, and I guess I'll try doing that at the end. So at this point, we have 3,600 left per player, which I know doesn't give us many options here. And since we have a couple lines in this lineup, I'm probably not going to try to use the Texans defense, although if we did use the Texans defense, that would open up our lineup just a little bit more. But I feel pretty good about the Washington football team defense. I imagine they're going to be the highest owned defense on this slate, but I feel like it's for a good reason, because Andy Dalton in primetime usually doesn't end up working out too well. And if we go that route, I know it's against the defense we just chose, but Michael Gallup's only $3,500, and I do think he's a fine, cheap pump play on this slate. You could also look at Kiki Cutie as well, but at that point, we'd have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Texans in our lineup, which is fine on a 3-game slate, but it might be a little bit overkill. So if you want to just try to diversify a little bit, Gallup's only $3,500, and he did have 5 targets last week, which I know is nothing crazy, but he's only $3,500, so it might be able to not open up your lineup a little bit, but he's a fine pump play if that's all you have left remaining in your lineup. And I don't think that's awful as well. So you'd have Watson, Zeke, Swift, Fuller, Cooks, Gallup, Hawkinson, Duke Johnson, and Washington football team. You could also use Amari Cooper in the flex spot as well. And I know I'd have 3 Cowboys versus my defense, but again, it's a small slate, so I don't really think defense is what's going to win you this week either. So you could go the Amari Cooper route as well, but I think with that being said, guys, that's going to be it for this video. So I hope it was helpful. If it was, make sure to leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I really do appreciate it. If you want to follow me over on social media, Pennell16 on Twitter, CPenn16 over on IG. And if you want to support the channel over on Patreon and get access to that spreadsheet that I kind of showed you for a couple of seconds in my video, it's got a ton of stuff on there, Vegas numbers, all the data you need pretty much. It's all on there. Links down below for that. You can hop into the Discord chat as well. I also have my cheat sheet with notes, projections on there too, ready for tomorrow afternoon. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So make sure to leave a like, and yeah, see you guys in the next one, and I hope you guys enjoy your Thanksgiving. And also, I will be doing a core plays video later on this afternoon or evening, so be on the lookout for that as well.